Hi, I'm Luke and welcome to Hero Movement. Today we're going to talk about a few alternatives to running for Zone 2 training. So quick recap to start. Zone 2 training, also known as MAF training, MAF training, or steady state endurance training, is essentially a low intensity, long duration type of training designed to help you build your aerobic base. So we're primarily using the aerobic system, using oxygen and fat as a fuel to resynthesize ATP, which is like our energy currency in the body, like Bitcoin for your body, basically. So the idea with Zone 2 training, as I talked about in previous videos, is that we can build our aerobic base through relatively low intensity training without putting loads of stress on the body. So running is probably the most common modality that people first turn to when it comes to Zone 2 training, but there are a number of issues that people often run into, no pun intended. So you might be an experienced runner who finds that to run in Zone 2 it just feels too slow, or maybe you have to walk whenever you get to a hill. You might find that walking isn't enough to get into Zone 2, but running is too intense. Or you might just not like running really at all and not really want to do it, but you still want to get some of the benefits of this Zone 2 steady state type of training. So I'm going to go over a few ideas related to all of the above. I've time-stamped them below if you want to skip ahead. So we'll briefly go over a few ways to modify your running if that's something you want to kind of stick to, and we'll touch on a few modalities that I've used instead or alongside running in my own practice. This camera is bright. So first up, if you're a somewhat experienced runner and you've turned to Zone 2 training and it feels really slow and you're frustrated and you have to walk some bits, know that that's completely normal, and typically persevering with the training for a few months, you'll start to see your pace improve. That being said, there are a couple of tweaks you can make. The first would be to find the flattest route possible, so you're not going to be changing elevation as much. You can maintain a steadier pace, so you can use a tool like Map My Run to find a route near you that is as flat as possible. Second thing would be to do Zone 2 repeats. So I've mentioned this in previous videos. Something that Phil Maffetone has touched on before, where you essentially find a long downhill stretch, not too steep so that it messes up your knees. It's ideally sort of a slight decline, and it'll take you anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes to run down. So a nice long hill. Run down it in your Zone 2 heart rate and then walk back up, a nice pacey walk, and rinse and repeat. So as well as building your base this way, you will get used to turning your legs over a little bit faster, which can help to make the transition to Zone 2 in more challenging terrain, I suppose. So the tweaks I would make if you want to stick to running, let's look at a few alternatives to running for Zone 2. So the old idiom that you should walk before you run definitely holds true when it comes to endurance training. Walking a lot of the time is seen as kind of inferior to running, but I'd say for most people it's probably a better idea. It's probably more suitable for them than running. So if you're relatively new to physical training, or perhaps you're carrying a little bit excess weight, you probably find it's hard to maintain a consistent pace, a running pace, while staying in Zone 2. You might also find, along with that running places quite a bit of stress on the joints, which isn't ideal if you're coming in untrained, maybe carrying a little bit of excess weight, and maybe have some imbalances or compensations. It's not generally going to be a great idea for your long-term joint health and integrity. Regular walking, though, on the other hand, is a great prerequisite to running. It's a good way to build kind of your Zone 1/2 aerobic base as well. It's also a good way to build some of that strength to support your joints, and you may find it contributes to losing any excess weight if that's something you're looking to do. Both of those things will then set you up better if running is something you want to take up in the future. There's a few options here. The first would be fast-paced power walking, the bum wiggling that you see in the Olympics. So as you gain more experience, you'll be able to pick up the pace, and that can be quite challenging in itself on your cardiovascular system, particularly if you find a hilly route, get out in nature, up in the mountains, and yeah, lots of benefits to that. Second thing would be weighted walk-in. So it could be a weighted vest, which balances the load quite nicely. It could just be a backpack with weights in, or with provisions in if you're going hiking, basically. So both are great options. I've used them in conjunction with the next modality when recovering from COVID, because running in zone 2 running was still too intense for me, placed too much stress on the system. So yeah, walking's great. Even if you are zone 2 running, walking is a great recovery tool, warm up, cool down tool as well to throw in. And it's just good for your general health. So rope flow is one of my favourite alternatives to running for zone 2 training, and just one of my favourite training modalities, full stop. We covered it a fair bit on the channel last year. So it's a really low impact, accessible way to get your heart rate up, but also mimic some athletic movement patterns. Particularly kind of the underhand stroke mimics locomotion, running, walking, crawling. So you get that coiling core motion that David Weck talks about, which can have a nice transfer over to your running form and actually make running a more enjoyable experience, which is ideal. So with the rope, once you nail the basics, you have quite a bit more control over the pace and the intensity compared to running. And the same principles apply. You calculate your zone 2 or MAF heart rate. You just try and maintain a steady kind of conversational pace. Instead of running, you're rolling the rope, maybe adding some jumps in as well. If you don't have a flow rope, then a normal jump rope is fine to start with. You might want to get a heavier rope at some point. There's a link down the description box below. You can get 10% off Octo Moves ropes, and they're really good quality. So our fourth modality is strength aerobics, which is a term that was coined by Pavel and the guys over at Strong First. It's quite a basic principle. You start by picking a few compound movements, maybe like 1 to 3. That could be a squat, a swing, a push-up, pistol squat, anything really that uses the whole body, a strength movement, even a clean or a snatch. You perform a rep or 2, and then you just follow that up with a low intensity activity that keeps your heart rate up in that zone 2 kind of area. So that could be jump rope, could be rope flow, jogging on the spot, whatever. So you just alternate between that strength movement and the kind of the cardiovascular movement for kind of the same time that you would with your zone 2, with your zone 2 running. So Pavel says that it's a great way to kind of build your aerobic base without the dishonor of aerobics, which make of that what you will. It's good. It's useful. I like it. I've used it. It's fun. Give it a try. Let me know how it goes. Fifth modality, cycling. One that I've enjoyed in the past. It's a lot easier to maintain a steady pace when it comes to staying in zone 2 compared to running, typically. One thing to consider, while regular cycling it's great for building your aerobic base and for your cardiovascular system, there are some compensations that the body will make if it's something you're doing on a regular basis. These compensations could impact your posture and your ability to move freely in other situations. So you often see tightness through the hips, tightness through the mid-back, that kind of forward posture associated with cycling from being in that position for a prolonged time period. This isn't ideal, particularly if you are already sitting quite a lot, which most of us are in everyday life. But yeah, it's still fun. It's something I enjoy doing now and again, going out on a long ride with my dad or a friend. But if it's something you're doing regularly, you'll want to be making sure you're opening up the hips with kind of lunges, couch stretch, that sort of thing, and staying open and free through the thoracic, rotating and extending. Rope flow actually is quite useful for that. So by now you'll probably realize that as long as you're keeping that heart rate in that conversational zone 2, you don't necessarily need a heart rate monitor. It's conversational, nice, easy pace. The actual modality doesn't necessarily matter that much. So we see running and cycling are often used because they're easy to track. You can compare your per kilometer or per mile time and see if you're getting faster while staying at the same heart rate, and that indicates that you've improved you built your cardiovascular base. But rope flow, hitting the heavy bag, shadow boxing, dance, flow, grappling, groundwork drills, mace flow, steel clubs, paddleboarding, swimming, kayaking, pretty much anything that you can do continuously that you enjoy can be adapted to Zone 2 training. In fact, you can let me know down below if you want what activities that you enjoy doing, what you might have already adapted or plan to adapt to fit into your training regime. So remember, if you don't have a heart rate monitor, you're just trying to maintain a pace that you can kind of go all day. So you can have a conversation, you can breathe nasally quite comfortably, and it feels comfortable in the body typically as well. So it can be useful to get geeky with the numbers, but it doesn't have to be that complicated if you don't want it to be. So I hope this video was useful. Give me a shout down below if you got any questions, if you want to tell me anything about your training. Have a healthy, heroic day, and I'll catch you soon.